All right, today we're diving into a real political puzzle coming out of Newark, New Jersey. This is a story that kicks off with a pretty serious accusation against the mayor, but then it just takes this wild, sudden turn. And what's left behind? A whole lot of unanswered questions. So let's get right into it.
And this question, really, it gets right to the core of what we're talking about. I mean, just imagine this. You've got this high-profile legal case, right? It's been all over the news for months, tons of debate, intense scrutiny on this major public figure, and then, poof, it just vanishes overnight. Well, that's pretty much exactly what went down here.
And here it is. This is the big, startling headline that basically kicked off this whole firestorm. The trespassing charges against Newark's Mayor Ras Baraka unexpectedly and completely dropped. So you've got to be asking, how in the world did we get here?
Okay, so first up, that sudden dismissal. This didn't just happen out of the blue. This case had been getting a ton of public attention for months, which is exactly why the abrupt ending was so shocking to everyone.
But hey, to really get why everyone was so surprised, we've got to rewind a bit. We have to go back to the very beginning and ask, what was the mayor actually accused of in the first place?
Which brings us to the initial charges. And look, this wasn't some super complex financial crimes case or anything like that. It was a pretty direct accusation. But, and this is the weird part, it was kind of shrouded in mystery right from the get-go.
So, the official charge? Trespassing. Sounds simple enough, right? But here's the thing. All the public reports were super thin on the actual details of what supposedly happened. That lack of clarity from day one, it just adds another confusing layer to this whole puzzle.
All right, so that brings us to the dismissal itself, and the official explanation for why the charges were dropped. Or maybe I should say the lack of an official explanation.
So the announcement drops late in the day. It comes from the U.S. Attorney for New Jersey, Alina Habba, but the reason they gave, it was incredibly vague. They just cited things like procedural issues or lack of evidence, without giving any real concrete specifics.
And this, right here, is where the story just explodes. That short non-explanation, it basically became the main event. It created this huge information vacuum, and you know what fills a vacuum? Speculation, frustration, and a ton of political debate from absolutely everyone.
And of course, in that vacuum, the public response was immediate, and it was deeply divided. It pretty much split the city right down the middle about what this whole thing really meant. You basically had two camps form instantly. On one side, you have the mayor's supporters. For them, this was total vindication. Proof, they said, that the charges were just politically motivated from the start. But on the other side, the critics, they weren't even really focused on guilt or innocence anymore. For them, the big issue was how this lack of transparency was seriously harming public trust in the system. Now, in the middle of all this public outcry, what did the mayor's office do? They kept their response pretty minimal. They put out a really brief statement that didn't really address the controversy head-on, but instead just, restated his commitment to serving the city.
So, where does all this leave us? I mean, the case itself might be officially closed, but the real story now is about all these questions that are still hanging in the air, and what the impact is going to be moving forward.
And really, this is the big question just looming over the city right now. When a legal process just ends so abruptly and with so little explanation, it makes everyone wonder, what's the real takeaway here? What happens when you get a resolution that doesn't actually resolve anything? So let's break down that broader impact, because it's a big deal. First, you've got the legal process itself. When you dismiss a case this big without a clear reason, it makes people question the integrity of the whole system. Second, there's public trust. When the officials don't give you reasons, that void gets filled with speculation and mistrust, plain and simple. And finally, this is now a huge political story. There's an election coming up, and you can bet this whole situation is going to be a major factor, influencing everything from the campaigns to how people vote. So at the end of the day, for the mayor's supporters, this feels like a win. For his critics, it feels like a failure of the system. But the much bigger question this whole episode leaves us with is, it's a deep one. When a legal process isn't transparent, can there ever really be true vindication for anyone? Or are we all just left with way more questions than answers? Thanks for joining us for this Explainer.